Picture this. It's dawn on a muddy field outside Lincoln in the year 1139 after Christ. The mist hangs low like a funeral shroud, and through it you can hear the distinctive thock-times of crossbow bolts finding their mark in human flesh. But here's what makes this morning different from 1,000 others just like it. It's not the sound of victory you're hearing, it's the sound of systematic slaughter. English crossbowmen crouch behind their wooden pavises, those tall shields that were supposed to protect them during the reload. Supposed to. But 30 seconds is a lifetime when Welsh longbowmen are sending arrow after arrow into your position. 30 agonizing seconds to wind that spanning belt around the crossbow prod, cranking and cranking while death falls from the sky like rain. Among these desperate men huddles Ralph of Rouen. Though at this point in our story, nobody calls him Ralph the Mad yet. That nickname comes later, and trust me, he'll earn it. Right now, he's just Brother Ralph, a Benedictine monk who happens to understand engineering better than most, tending to wounded soldiers who whisper things that would give you nightmares. These aren't tales of enemy valor or glorious combat. No, these men speak of something far more terrifying, those vulnerable moments during reload when you're completely helpless. Imagine being a sitting duck for half a minute. Every single time you want to shoot, your spanning belt tears into your back like a torturer's device. The windlass mechanism breaks shoulders with its violent action, and through it all, you know that somewhere out there, an enemy archer is drawing a bead on your exposed position. Ralph watches another crossbowman fall, not to enemy fire but to mechanical failure. The man's spanning belt snaps under tension, sending him sprawling backward just as a Welsh arrow finds the gap in his defense. It's an engineering problem claiming another life, and Ralph's mind, that peculiar combination of monastic devotion and mechanical obsession, begins to work. You have to understand the crossbow to appreciate Ralph's frustration. This weapon packs tremendous power, enough to punch through the finest mail armor at 200 paces. But that power comes at a devastating cost in time and vulnerability. The spanning belt wraps around the crossbowman's waist and attaches to the bowstring. To reload, he literally has to use his entire body as a lever, putting his foot in a stirrup at the front of the crossbow and hauling backward with every ounce of strength he possesses. Think about it from a modern perspective. It's like having a sniper rifle that takes 30 seconds to chamber each round, during which time you have to stand up, turn around, and perform calisthenics, in plain view of every enemy marksman on the battlefield. Between battles, Ralph retreats to the monastery workshops where something remarkable happens. Hidden among dusty shelves of illuminated manuscripts, he discovers captured Arabic texts, works of engineering genius that European craftsmen have never seen. These aren't religious texts or philosophical treatises. They're technical manuals describing mechanical principles that could revolutionize warfare. The secret, Ralph realizes, lies not in brute strength, but in the multiplication of force through gears. It's a concept as elegant as it is revolutionary. Why force a man to use his entire body when properly arranged mechanical advantage could do the same work with minimal effort? But here's where Ralph runs headfirst into the stone wall of medieval tradition. Guildmasters guard their methods like state secrets. When Ralph approaches them with sketches and proposals for mechanical improvements, they don't just dismiss him, they brand him a dangerous madman. God intended war to require suffering, they warn him. To seek ease in killing is to invite damnation. But Ralph can't unsee what he's seen in those Arabic texts. Late at night, by flickering candlelight in his cell, he sketches designs that dance at the edge of possibility. Gears within gears, leverage systems that could transform the crossbow from a cumbersome siege weapon into something swift and deadly. His first prototype is a disaster. During a demonstration before skeptical military leaders, the mechanism literally explodes under pressure, sending metal fragments flying. One nearly decapitates a master crossbowman who had grudgingly agreed to test the device. The crowd disperses, muttering about monks who meddle in matters of war, and Ralph finds himself more isolated than ever. Yet in his cell that night, something burns in Ralph's eyes that wasn't there before. It's not just scholarly curiosity anymore, it's obsession. Pure, focused, dangerous obsession with creating what everyone else calls impossible. a device that could allow one man to reload a powerful crossbow swiftly and safely. The other monks begin to whisper. Brother Ralph spends too much time with his gears and springs, too little time in prayer. His superiors warn him about the sin of pride, about seeking to improve upon God's design for warfare. But Ralph has seen too much death, witnessed too many good men fall not to enemy skill but to the limitations of their own weapons. As winter settles over the monastery, Ralph works alone in the workshops, surrounded by half-finished prototypes and scrolls covered in calculations. Somewhere in those mechanical dreams lies the key to everything, a revolution in warfare that will echo through the centuries. But first, he has to survive the dangerous game of medieval innovation, where calling a man mad is often the kindest accusation he'll face. The real question isn't whether Ralph can build his impossible device. The question is whether he can navigate the treacherous waters of politics, tradition, and religious suspicion long enough to change the world. Because change it he will, in ways that neither he nor anyone else in that cold monastery workshop can possibly imagine. The Craniquin is coming, and with it, everything will transform. Between the years 1140 and 1145, Ralph of Rouen undergoes a transformation that would make Machiavelli proud. The idealistic inventor who once believed that good ideas would naturally triumph, he's gone. In his place stands a cunning political operator who understands that in medieval Europe, innovation without manipulation is just an expensive way to commit suicide. His workshop becomes something unprecedented, a secret laboratory that operates under cover of darkness, like some kind of medieval research and development facility. Picture this scene. Genoese merchants with gold sewn into their cloaks, minor nobles desperate for any advantage that might elevate their status, and mercenary captains who've learned that survival depends on superior firepower. They gather by flickering torchlight, speaking in whispers about things that could get them all burned as heretics. Each failed prototype costs more than a common soldier earns in 5 years. Think about that for a moment. Ralph is essentially burning through what amounts to small fortunes, creating devices that explode, mechanisms that jam, and contraptions that work exactly once before falling apart. Wood splinters under stress loads that seemed reasonable on parchment, metal shears along grain lines that looked solid in theory. And still Ralph persists, because he's seen too many good men die during those 30-second reload windows, to give up now. His breakthrough comes not through divine inspiration, though he'll later claim God guided his hand, but through observing something as mundane as a wine press. He's watching a monk operate the massive screw mechanism that crushes grapes, and suddenly it hits him like a crossbow bolt to the brain. The same spiral principle, applied horizontally with precisely cut gears, could wind a crossbow string with minimal effort. The Craniquin takes shape over months of obsessive work. It's beautiful in the way that only perfectly engineered machines can be, a mechanical monster of steel and ingenuity that looks like it was designed by someone who understood both mathematics and murder. The device uses a system of gears to multiply human effort, allowing a soldier to cock even the most powerful crossbow with a few turns of a handle. No more spanning belts tearing backs open. No more windlass mechanisms breaking shoulders. Just smooth, efficient, deadly mechanical advantage. But here's the thing about innovation that every modern entrepreneur understands, but medieval inventors had to learn the hard way. Having a revolutionary product means absolutely nothing if you can't get anyone to adopt it. Ralph faces a challenge that makes developing the Craniquin look simple, convincing a deeply conservative military establishment to embrace change. The politics are treacherous enough to make modern corporate boardrooms look like kindergarten playgrounds. Ralph demonstrates his device first to those with nothing to lose. Landless knights whose only hope for advancement lies in superior technology, ambitious merchants who see profit potential in military innovation, and cities threatened by larger powers that need every possible advantage. The church itself splits down the middle like a log struck by an axe. Conservative priests declare mechanical advantage an affront to divine will, arguing that God intended warfare to require physical sacrifice and spiritual fortitude. Progressive clerics counter that God gave man dominion over natural forces, specifically so he could improve his condition through intelligence and innovation. The theological debates become so heated that bishops nearly come to blows over gear ratios and mechanical principles. Ralph survives 2 assassination attempts by conservative military factions who see his Cranaquin as a threat to the natural order. The first attack comes from crossbow guild masters, who rightly fear that mechanical devices will destroy their monopoly on specialized knowledge. The second comes from professional soldiers who've built their entire careers on physical prowess and see mechanical advantage as a path toward obsolescence. But Ralph has learned to play the political game with the skill of a master chess player. He builds coalitions carefully, offering exclusive production rights to craftsmen who support him, providing military advantages to nobles who back his research, and slowly converting influential church leaders by framing mechanical innovation as divine gift rather than satanic temptation. His masterstroke comes when Henry of Champagne, facing superior imperial forces that outnumber his army 3-1, agrees to equip 100 crossbowmen with Cranaquins. The investment seems insane. Each device costs as much as a warhorse, and Henry is essentially betting his entire treasury on an untested technology developed by a monk that most people consider mad. The Battle of Montmirail becomes Ralph's vindication and medieval warfare's revolution. Those 100 men achieve the firepower of 300 traditional crossbowmen, pouring bolts into imperial cavalry charges with a speed and efficiency that turns the tide of battle. Knights who've never faced defeat suddenly find themselves overwhelmed by what appears to be impossible rates of fire from enemy positions. The sound of Cranaquins in action, that distinctive clicking of gears and ratchets, becomes the soundtrack of a new age in warfare. Imperial soldiers describe it later as hearing death itself being manufactured on an assembly line, mechanical and relentless and utterly terrifying. But even as Ralph watches his Cranaquins prove themselves in combat, he knows that his real battle is just beginning. Success in medieval innovation doesn't mean acceptance. It means that everyone who profits from the old ways will now try to destroy you with renewed determination. From 1145 through 1190, the Cranaquin spreads across European battlefields like wildfire, and like wildfire, it transforms everything it touches. This isn't just the story of a mechanical device. This is the story of how technology reshapes civilization in ways its inventors never imagined. At the siege of Damascus, Crusader crossbowmen achieve something that would have seemed like sorcery just decades earlier. Their Cranaquins click like deadly clockwork, a mechanical rhythm that becomes the heartbeat of a new kind of warfare. The Muslim defenders, who faced European crossbows for generations, suddenly find themselves outgunned by what appears to be the same weapons they've always known. But these aren't the same weapons at all. The Cranaquin evolves as it spreads, improved by the master workshops of Milan, where Italian craftsmen, arguably the finest mechanical engineers in medieval Europe, add refinements that Ralph could never have imagined. Stronger gears that won't shear under stress. Portable designs that allow soldiers to carry their Cranaquins rather than dragging them on carts. Quick-release mechanisms that let damaged devices be swapped out in seconds rather than minutes. But it's at the Battle of Legnano in 1176 that the Cranaquin achieves its greatest triumph and reveals its most profound implications. Emperor Frederick Barbarossa's heavy cavalry, the cream of German knighthood, men who've never known defeat, thunders across the field toward what appears to be a ragged line of Lombard militiamen. These aren't professional soldiers. They're farmers and craftsmen, shopkeepers and artisans who've been handed crossbows and told to defend their cities. Under the old system, this would have been a massacre. Peasant levies against imperial knights? The outcome would have been predetermined, written in blood and social hierarchy. But these Lombard militiamen carry Cranaquin-equipped crossbows, and that changes everything. The first cavalry charge hits a wall of bolts, so dense it seems to physically stop horses in mid-air. Knights who've survived a dozen battles fall from their saddles like wheat before a scythe. The survivors wheel around for a second charge, expecting the traditional lull, while crossbowmen struggle to reload. Instead, they face another devastating volley, and then another, and another. The Cranaquins click their mechanical death song, and the flower of German nobility withers under firepower that should have been impossible. Frederick Barbarossa himself barely escapes the field, his supposedly invincible army shattered by technology wielded by men he would have dismissed as rabble. The social implications are staggering. If farmers with craniquins can defeat knights with centuries of training, what does that say about the divine right of nobility? What does it mean for a social order built on the premise that some men are born to rule and others to serve? The craniquin revolution brings consequences that no one anticipated. Professional crossbowmen, the elite specialists who've built careers on their ability to handle complex military technology, resist the device that threatens to make their expertise obsolete. Why train for years to master the spanning belt when any peasant can learn to operate a craniquin in an afternoon? But older soldiers, their bodies broken by decades of spanning belts that have torn their backs and shoulders to pieces, embrace craniquins like salvation itself. Men who faced forced retirement due to physical disability suddenly find their careers extended by mechanical advantage. Veterans who thought their fighting days were over discover they can still serve effectively, their experience and wisdom now enhanced rather than limited by failing bodies. Social hierarchies that have stood for centuries begin to crack and crumble. In besieged cities, women learn to operate craniquin-equipped crossbows, defending walls while men fight in fields. This isn't just military necessity, it's social revolution. When mechanical skill matters more than physical strength, traditional gender roles start to blur in ways that make conservative churchmen break out in cold sweats. The technology spreads through espionage and betrayal, because that's how military innovations always spread. Blueprints are smuggled in merchant caravans, hidden in false bottoms of wine barrels and sewn into the linings of traveling cloaks. Captured devices are reverse-engineered in enemy workshops by craftsmen who understand that their lives depend on matching their opponent's capabilities. Trade secrets become state secrets, and state secrets become causes for war. Ralph himself, now called Ralph the Mad, with grudging respect rather than outright mockery, finds himself leading the defense of Acre in 1189. He's an old man now, his body ravaged by fever and his mind still sharp as a crossbow bolt. From the walls of the besieged city, he watches his craniquins help hold back Saladin's forces, their mechanical clicking audible even over the sounds of battle. As death approaches, Ralph speaks words that will be remembered long after his bones turn to dust. "Let them call me mad. My madness changed the world." He dies, watching the devices he created defend a city that might otherwise have fallen, mechanical children of his imagination continuing the fight long after their creator can no longer hold a pen to sketch improvements. But Ralph's death doesn't end the craniquin's story. It's just the end of the beginning. The revolution he started is about to reshape not just warfare, but the very foundations of medieval civilization. After Ralph's death, the craniquin's impact doesn't fade away like some forgotten battlefield innovation. It ripples through the centuries like stones thrown into a still pond, creating waves that transform not just warfare but the very fabric of European civilization. This is how technological revolution really works, not with a single dramatic moment, but through a cascade of changes that remake the world in ways no one could have predicted. By 1200, every major European power fields craniquin-equipped crossbow units as a matter of survival rather than choice. Professional soldiers replace feudal levies because technical expertise has become more valuable than hereditary privilege or raw courage. The days when noble birth guaranteed military command are ending, replaced by meritocracy based on understanding complex mechanical systems. A peasant who can maintain and operate craniquins effectively suddenly outranks a lord's son who can't tell a gear from a ratchet. The device influences architecture in ways that would have baffled medieval builders just decades earlier. Castle walls grow thicker and more complex to withstand the increased firepower that craniquins make possible. Engineers develop star-shaped fortifications with interlocking fields of fire, designed specifically to maximize craniquin effectiveness. Meanwhile, attackers develop specialized siege craniquins that fire massive bolts capable of punching through stone walls that previous weapons couldn't scratch. Cities with craniquin manufactories gain unprecedented political power that rivals traditional feudal authority. These workshops become closely guarded state secrets, their master craftsmen treated like crown jewels, and their production capabilities determining the balance of power between kingdoms. Milan, Genoa, and the manufacturing centers of Flanders suddenly find themselves courted by emperors and kings who understand that control of craniquin production means control of military superiority. But here's where the story gets really interesting. The mechanical principles don't stay confined to military applications. Clockmakers adapt Cranaquin gears for precise timekeeping, creating mechanical clocks that transform daily life by making accurate scheduling possible. Mill designers incorporate similar mechanisms for grinding grain more efficiently, feeding growing populations. The idea that mechanical advantage can multiply human effort becomes a cornerstone of medieval thinking, fundamentally changing how people view the relationship between man and nature. Philosophers debate whether God operates the universe like a master engineer operating a cosmic Cranaquin. Artists incorporate gear imagery into religious paintings, showing divine machinery governing celestial movements. The mechanical worldview that will eventually produce the scientific revolution has its roots in workshops where craftsmen perfect Cranaquin mechanisms, learning that natural forces follow predictable mathematical laws rather than divine whim. By 1300, European society has embraced mechanical innovation as divine gift rather than satanic temptation. The same church that once condemned Ralph as a heretic now celebrates mechanical devices as proof of human ingenuity blessed by God. Universities establish chairs in mechanical philosophy. Guild systems evolve to incorporate new technologies rather than resist them. The Cranaquin's success ironically accelerates its own obsolescence, because that's how technological progress works. Each innovation creates the conditions for the next breakthrough. The same workshops perfecting mechanical devices begin experimenting with gunpowder weapons, seeking the next revolutionary advantage that will make Cranaquins seem as obsolete as spanning belts. At Marignano in 1515, Swiss Cranaquin crossbowmen make their last major stand against French cannon. These soldiers represent the culmination of centuries of mechanical warfare, their weapons perfected through generations of innovation and refinement. They face artillery that renders their expertise instantly obsolete, chemical explosions that make mechanical advantage irrelevant. The age of mechanical warfare yields to the age of gunpowder, but the lessons learned in Cranaquin workshops survive. Ralph the Mad's legacy endures in ways he never could have imagined. In workshops across Europe, apprentice engineers still swear their oaths on Cranaquins, honoring the mad monk who dared imagine a better way. The device itself becomes a symbol of human ingenuity triumphing over seemingly impossible challenges. But the real legacy isn't mechanical, it's intellectual. Ralph proved that one person's impossible dream can reshape history if that person has the courage to persist through failure and the wisdom to navigate the politics of innovation. He showed that technology doesn't just change how we fight, it changes how we think, how we organize society, and how we understand our place in the universe. The Cranaquin disappeared from battlefields, replaced by more efficient weapons. But the idea behind it, that human intelligence can create mechanical solutions to physical problems, that idea transformed the world. Every gear that turns in a modern machine, every precision mechanism that multiplies human effort, every device that makes the impossible seem routine, carries within it the spirit of a mad monk who refused to accept that 30 seconds of vulnerability was the price of military effectiveness. Ralph of Rouen died believing his Cranaquin would change warfare. He was right, but he thought too small. His mechanical miracle didn't just change how men fought, it changed how they thought. And in the end, that may have been the most revolutionary innovation of all. In the end, Ralph's story reminds us that the most profound changes often come not from kings or generals or philosophers, but from ordinary people who look at the world and dare to ask, what if there's a better way? Sometimes, just sometimes, that question changes everything.